Hi, my name is Leo Logan, and this is the Black Panther review for NoProof.com.
And it's hard for a good man to be a king.
For the most part, I really enjoyed Black Panther. I think director Ryan Coogler and his team did a really great job of crafting a fictional country like Wakanda, where there were a lot of fantastical elements to show the advanced civilization, but there was also enough elements that kept it grounded in a reality that seemed plausible. When I go into a film, the thing I care most about is the story, and Black Panther by far has the greatest story out of all of the Marvel films. It probably has the strongest group of supporting characters that are fully developed, where they each have their own motivations or ideals. So even when Black Panther isn't on the screen, you're still invested in the story. Until now, the best Marvel's been at developing supporting side characters was maybe Black Widow, and that took about 3 films since her introduction. And then you had the overcompensation of Hawkeye.
This is an agent of some kind.
Gentlemen, this is Laura.
I think this would probably be in my top 6 for Marvel films. So I guess it would be my 6th favorite film since you don't make a top 6 for anything else.
Don't freeze.
My main criticism of the movie is that there were some Marvel Studios requirements for superhero film that I felt sometimes got in the way of the story I was very much interested in. And that some scenes that could have gone further into their discussion were interrupted with these action sequences that aren't quite... These action sequences I didn't find particularly too creative. I actually found them kind of rinse and repeat from previous Marvel films. First, on perspective, this movie was always going to make money. Marvel hasn't had a film make under $500 million since before The Avengers in 2012. Even if this movie didn't do well overseas, the black audience would definitely make up for it in America. In a box office report from 2016, minorities actually make up a larger share of the movie-going audience compared to their actual population in America. So when you make a film actually acknowledging minorities, you get returns like Black Panther's opening weekend. And this is already a known fact in Hollywood, seeing that Screen Gems releases Lifetime movies starring black people every year for a quick profit. Don't just blame Tyler Perry. Yet in their attempt to challenge the lack of diversity in Hollywood, you tend to see movie critics oversell films like Wonder Woman or Black Panther, and definitely Get Out. It was okay. But you see these films talked about with coded terms like revolutionary or game-changing, where they're made into an event with unrealistic expectations. These movies are already events, and this movie is good enough to stand on its own, to not need the overall appraisal, or as I've read in comments, affirmative action. And when you consider how much Black Panther had to be more than just a movie, it's really impressive what director Ryan Coogler and his team got right. 1. Coogler needed to deliver a fresh superhero story that was also an origin story. I think Coogler achieved this by looking beyond developing just the main character, giving all the supporting characters their own motivations, their own purposes, and really just not trying to make a filler movie. When I think of Thor, I don't really feel like I need to watch Thor to watch the Avengers films. There's still characters like Jane or whoever Rachel McAdams plays in Doctor Strange that you feel will be completely forgotten about or not brought back for a sequel. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe alone, this is the 18th film.
We wanted to do something that was very different and not, just sort of straight down the middle superhero movie. So all of his references, for the most part, weren't other superhero films. They were films like Samsara and Baraka, and we looked at Planet Earth. But they're all very grounded in humanity, and then the story of family. We looked at, Godfather, and we looked at Prophet, which is kind of one of our favorite films that we sort of keep coming back to.
To help craft the country of Wakanda, Ryan Coogler actually brought aboard his team who worked with him on his previous films. This is the first for Marvel Studios, who typically likes to keep it in-house. 2. Delivered the requisite action and spectacle expected of a $200 million film. This is the most expensive film about black people since Gods of Egypt. There's one. Black Panther, playing the magical god of wisdom. In terms of spectacle, Wakanda is magnificent, but in terms of overall action, well... 3. Show a positive representation of black people, Africans.
Doing like everything that Ryan and I talked about was because Wakanda is a fictional African nation, we wanted to include where we located it in the movie. The bordering countries, we wanted to include that culture, sort of like saying, oh, they, in the beginning 10,000 years ago, all these different tribes came to this piece of land and then stayed.
And I guess through the experience of getting everybody in the various costume looks and really having to, think really deeply about Africa and how we all wanted it to be very royal. I was challenged every day. I was never ever relaxed and saying, I got this. I was challenged every day. So anytime there was a new costume in its development, it was an exercise of how do we make this different and how do we present it in the right way? How do we dispel stereotypes and myths?
Yes, Wakanda is supposed to have technology that's more advanced, but it still needed to honor the African traditions and cultures. For example, they couldn't just make up a fictional language for Wakanda. They actually based it off of Osa.
Kosa.
I went on a trip to Senegal to meet up with a musician named Baba Mal, and I went on tour with him and then recorded some amazing musicians in the studio, in Baba Mal's studio. Went to South Africa, and that was kind of the start of the score to get inspired and understand what I need to do.
And 4. Positive representation of black people without overdoing it. The characters are great, but more importantly, grounded enough to feel like real people. Newcomer Letitia Wright plays the Black Panther's younger sister, and she brings a fun, infectious energy to the character, and she also has a great brother-sister dynamic with Black Panther that feels very relatable.
My king.
Stop it.
I haven't finished season 4 of Black Mirror, but I definitely look forward to her episode. I think. Then there's Denai Guerrera, who plays Okoye, the head of the Black Panther's bodyguards. Going into this movie, I thought I would hate her character, seeing that I hate Michonne on The Walking Dead. But she ended up being one of my favorite characters in the movie. It really does show what strong writing can do for a character.
It was just so much fun to be working on a project that we all felt was ours, and there was a way in which Ryan invited us to the creative table that, we were able to put our voices in it, and so when we watch it, we just feel the ownership. It's ours.
It's also important to consider the lack of opportunities for a lot of the castmates. Until now, I've only known Lupita Nyong'o as a slave.
Lupita
Nyong'o.
No. Which is a shame because the Academy Award winner is actually my second favorite character in this film, and she gets to deliver some of the best lines in the movie. This is Lupita's third franchise with Disney, and only the first time they showed her face.
Show me my respect. I waited my entire life for this.
And of course, my favorite character of them all is Eric Killmonger, played by Michael B. Jordan. Without Coogler, Michael B. Jordan has only appeared in 2 live-action films in the last 5 years. One being That Awkward Moment with Zac Efron and Miles Teller. The other being the reboot of Fantastic Four.
Flame on!
Where due to reshoots, his character was completely trimmed down. I also think Marvel probably trimmed a lot of his scenes in this movie as well.
I understood that reference.
Last but definitely not least is Chadwick Boseman, who before Black Panther was already playing larger-than-life heroes. In fact, he has played just about every black person you learn about during Black History Month.
Good God!
Chadwick's performance in the film is more character work, so it's not necessarily flashy, but it definitely gives the rest of the cast a chance to shine. Finally, he's finding some box office success at the age of 40. Which is really old when you consider hand-to-hand combat heroes like Captain America may be retiring at the age of 38, and you have Ben Affleck's Batman coming out of retirement at the age of 43. Even when you look at all heroes, Benedict was also 40 for Doctor Strange, but the role didn't require as much physicality. The oldest goes to the ageless wonder Paul Rudd, who played Ant-Man at the age of 46. And of course, the man who started it all for Marvel, Robert Downey Jr., was 43 when he played Tony Stark. Cast because his legal issues perfectly matched that of Tony Stark. But actually, the highest paid person in Iron Man was Terrence Howard.
Next time, baby.
Nope.
Now on to the spoiler section of the review where I discuss the film. And this week I decided to title it Spoiler Rock. This movie, like any other film, has its flaws. There was clearly some rewrites at the request of Marvel Studios to include more action, but the action that was added really was underwhelming. I think as Marvel Studios has improved at its writing, they also just kind of started to ignore the creativity in their action sequences. You have action sequences like the casino scene, which tries to be like Civil War where all the heroes battle, but without all the extra powers, just looks more like choreography from Arrow. Coogler's previous film cost $35 million, so I can see Marvel feeling the need to supervise their $200 million film. Christopher Nolan had problems with fight scenes in Batman Begins, and it didn't quite improve with The Dark Knight Rises. If you actually watched his previous film, Creed, you would know Coogler could deliver the action with emotion. There's impact behind every hit, and this additional weight adds more awareness to the space of the surroundings, to the movement of the characters. This is perfectly captured in the ritual battles at the cliffside. And then you had CGI battles where they might look kind of cool if you haven't really seen superhero films, but that's really the norm now. There was nothing overly impressive or creative about these sequences. So the final battle was definitely underwhelming when they only have one brief talk before the battle, and then it's all CGI. And not just that, it cuts away from them sometimes just to show some kind of chaotic mess on the battlefield or this spaceship battle, where you really lose the focus of these two characters dueling. Coogler and his team's attention to detail really made it noticeable when these rewrites were inserted into the film. I really enjoyed Killmonger in the film, so when he disappeared for 45 minutes, I was definitely disappointed. And then when he returns, he immediately kills Claw, which really took me out of the film because that created a huge plot hole for me. Why did he need Claw? Originally, I thought he needed Claw to get into Wakanda, but once he killed Claw, he showed he already knew how to get into Wakanda without Claw. Then I thought, well, maybe he was using Claw to lure out the Black Panther, like in South Korea. But Killmonger actually wasn't in South Korea when that incident occurred. So then I realized, well, why did they need to steal the vibranium in London to sell it in South Korea? But if you take away those scenes, the whole movie is set in Wakanda. And I think Ryan Coogler really had a personal story that just focused on Wakanda. But it does make sense when you realize South Korea and London are Marvel's second and third largest international markets. China is number one, but for some reason prefers Vin Diesel over Marvel films.
Salute me, familia.
I am Groot.
So really the only thing South Korea did for the film was find a way to shoehorn Martin Freeman's character into the film, who was honestly very useless for this film. But I guess for Marvel Studios allowed them to add an aerial battle to make the scale much grander. Also, what does Martin Freeman represent? Between Black Panther and Killmonger, you have the notion of maintaining the status quo versus change, and how do you go about that change? Between Okoye and Nakia, you have how to serve your country in a traditional way, or in how to find a non-traditional purpose in terms of serving your country. Shuri can be thought of as science and technology. Are her designs tools meant to improve, or could they easily be misused as weapons to enslave? We know Claw, although he wasn't in the movie that much, he clearly represented European colonialism. And then there's this guy, who is supposed to represent the CIA, and I guess is saying the CIA is good. Because Killmonger doesn't return until the halfway point, it feels like it took an hour for the movie to get started. and then they had to rush everything after that. Killmonger and Black Panther had to fight each other. Killmonger had to reveal his identity. Killmonger and Black Panther each visit their fathers in the ancestral plane. Killmonger lays out his plan for world domination. Killmonger carries out his plan for world domination. Black Panther almost dies. Black Panther is revived. Black Panther recruits the help of the M'Baku. Too much time was wasted in South Korea, which reminded me of The Dark Knight Rises, where you spend all this time watching Bruce Wayne with a broken back, and then we have to skip over how he got back into the city without any money, any contacts. Pretty much what would clearly show what makes him Batman. You had this kind of slower movement in the Wakanda area that I felt could have like cut back and forth between his scheming outside of Wakanda while Wakanda's trying to make a peaceful transition to their new king. I think this is where Marvel Studios kind of stepped in and felt since Wakanda was so slow, we needed more action. And it gets worse because I could easily see where this time spent, where maybe they still could use South Korea, but they didn't need to devote 20-25 minutes to it. This time could have been better spent developing M'Baku or Daniel Kaluuya's character to kind of show how Killmonger walks into Wakanda, connects with some of the tribes to show that not everyone agrees with the way Wakanda interacts with the world. That way, when the final battle comes, there's even more conflict because you understand even more characters and more of why they are fighting on this side versus I'm just following my leader of my tribe. And this would perfectly open up for part 2 to the film, where when Wakanda is now no longer isolated from the country, they are still fractured from this battle. Usually characters don't die in Marvel films, so I thought this one was a strange one because they actually crafted a really strong villain. But if you think about it, why would Black Panther go help fight Thanos when you have a threat like Killmonger still in Wakanda? Since Ryan Coogler was only signed to one film, I think Michael B. Jordan definitely chose to kill off his character in case Coogler doesn't come back. These two have a strong bond, and all of Ryan Coogler's films with Michael B. Jordan likes to focus on the themes of identity, how the world views you. Marvel really wants to focus on the crossover events, but like I said, Black Panther was always going to be more than just about its hero. Closing notes, I recommend the 2005 film Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, starring Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer. It's how Robert Downey Jr. was chosen for Iron Man, and it's also how he recruited the director for Iron Man 3.
What did you just do?
I put in one bullet, didn't I?
You put a live round in that gun.
Oh, yeah, there was like an 8% chance. Wasn't it just 8?
8?
Yeah.
Who taught you math?
If Ryan Coogler does return for a sequel, I hope Marvel Studios stays out of his way. If he doesn't, please do not hire Jordan Peele. Thank you.
You know, whether it was Ninja Turtles, whether it was Power Rangers, or you know, Batman, you know, Spider-Man.
Can you look at all these different superheroes?
Yeah, like, you know, what I noticed was none of their worlds looked like my world. You know, and when I was growing up in the East Bay area in Oakland, you know, my family, you know, my friends, you know, everybody was black. I was all longing for you know, stories that looked like, you know, what I know to be, you know, my world.